This is from my girlfriend, who is full Navajo. She grew up on the reservation in New Mexico. She had this uncle, but more like an older cousin from my understanding. Not that it matters. So this guy was in his 50s, had been married to the same woman his entire life. One night he woke up in a terrible sweat and felt super uneasy about the woman lying next to him in bed. No sooner had he thought it than the door creaked open and he watched some broken and black creature slink across the bedroom floor and crawl back into his wife's body. He told some friends and family, but word got back to his wife about what he'd witnessed. 2 days later he died of a heart attack in bed. This happened about 4 years ago when I was on my spring break. My uncle, who got his TV turned off, asked us if you could easily hear when someone is walking up the steps. Our dog, an outdoor dog, didn't even make a sound either. My uncle was spooked until he recognized the man standing out there. I don't know who he was, but most of my family knew. But before my uncle could do anything, the man walked away and open. That window is about 10 feet to the left of our TV at that time. My uncle said that he turned to look at the window and he saw a man standing there. Our porch is pretty old and wooden. You could easily hear when someone is walking up the steps. Our dog, an outdoor dog, didn't even make a sound either. My uncle was spooked until he recognized the man standing out there. I don't know who he was, but most of my family knew. But before my uncle could do anything, the man walked away. When my family came back home a few days later, my mom told me this story, but what really spooked me was that man died just 3 days after my uncle saw him on our porch. Now I'm a Navajo. In my culture, we have these evil people called skinwalkers. They say when you catch a skinwalker during the act and expose their identity, they will die in 3 days. I still don't know whether that man was one of these skinwalkers. Why he was at our house and him passing so suddenly is still a mystery to this day. Suburban skinwalker encounter. I live in a suburban neighborhood with lots of large trees. Even before too late in the day, it gets pretty dark and moody. My mom sent me on an errand once to stop by a friend's house down the street and pick up some things. The route takes me through a stretch of road that has some parked cars on either side of the street. It was 6, early evening. About 15 minutes into my walk, I saw a little kid, not sure if it was a girl or boy, riding a bike in my direction from the opposite end of the road. I also happened to see that sitting by one of the parked cars ahead of me was a skinny, black dog. It was large and slender looking, like a greyhound, but also shaggy. The dog just seemed to be sitting there, looking in the kid's direction. It didn't seem to have noticed me, so I just walked forward to fulfill my errand. It wasn't until I was some 10 to 15 feet away that I realized something was not right with this animal. It remained seated on its haunches, but it was now very clear to me that its back legs were much too long for its body, folded in an unnatural way. But more disturbing than that was what it was doing with its front paws. This is something I will never forget seeing. The dog's forelegs were positioned in front, where they should have been, but I stopped in my tracks when I realized that the paws were patting the ground in unison, kind of like the way you feel for lost keys in a blanket. The dog seemed to be drumming the ground in anticipation. Or excitement. Or it was pretending to be a dog with its paws on the ground. And it was looking at this clueless child heading its way. I must have made some sort of sound even as I was frozen in place because the patting stopped, and this thing slowly got up on its back legs and stood up, like a man. It was easily 6 feet tall, maybe more. I turned around and began to sprint home. I had my back to it, but I knew it was looking at me now. So I just got out of there. To this day, I don't know what happened to the little kid.